Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to thank everybody for participating in our Neumann University Sport Management Virtual Conference. Today's panel is Keeping Fans Connected when the sports teams stop. Okay, now I'm going to kick it over to our panelists, and they're going to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their specific roles and responsibilities.
I will start. You may start, Marisa.
Whoever wants to start first.
I'm jumping right in. I'm Blake Lawrence, the co-founder, CEO of Opendorse. Opendorse is an athlete marketing platform. More than 12,000 athletes around the world use our technology to manage relationships with their content partners, which would be a team, league, or athletic department, and commercial partners, sponsors, brands, advertisers. Long story short, tomorrow night during the NFL draft, you'll see NFL draft picks promoting EA Sports and Panini trading cards and Tide and other Procter & Gamble brands. Every piece of content that those NFL players, right after they're picked, share on social will all flow through our technology. And we do that every day around the world for thousands of athletes and brands, from Linnea and crew at Indiana to the EA Sports of the world. So excited to share the athlete marketing space with you all.
Hey, Marissa, do you want me to go next?
Yes, go for it.
I'm Linnea Phillips. I'm the Assistant Director of Digital and Social Media at Indiana University. Long story short, I lead our social media at Indiana. I run everything called IU Hoosiers. So we have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify. I also have a heavy hand in men's basketball and football. And then I also help a bit with some of our Olympic sports. I have a huge intern team. Some of them are probably watching. Shout out to my interns. They help manage a lot of stuff for us at Indiana as well. And I just get to do cool things on the internet all day. So.
Great. I'm Brent Gambill. I'm the Senior Director of Communications and Digital at Richmond Raceway. We are a NASCAR-owned company, so we are all, we work directly with NASCAR and pretty much everything we do in more of a centralized structure now. In my role, I oversee all of the public relations, media relations, as well as everything with digital marketing, digital media, including our social media, our social channels, website, our app, also creative services and video production. So we kind of work ourselves almost as an in-house agency with a lot of what we do, trying to create content. And as you've probably seen, if you tuned into Fox or FS1 over the weekend, we were the iRace for NASCAR last weekend. So we had a really fun and robust week of virtual engagement with fans across the country.
So I'll go next. My name is Katie Leighton, and I have a public relations, communications, and marketing firm at Leighton Communications. I've been up and running for 19 years now. Before that, I spent about 10 years in the media, sports media and news. My focus has always been athlete marketing and athlete communications and philanthropy for athletes. I work directly with high-profile names in sports. I also offer the marketing side of for businesses that are trying to tie themselves to the sports industry and capitalize on brands and names in the sports arena. So my passion has always been the earned media space, and it's kind of what I built my business on in the early days. But obviously, having to transition and keep up with the times, definitely do a lot of social media as well for clients.
And I am Neil Horowitz. I am been in sports for over 10 years now, mostly in social and digital media. Now with Greenfly, I lead our product marketing efforts. Do a lot, and we are a brand advocacy platform that primarily works around rapid exchange of content, multimedia between parties, whether those brand advocates are athletes, our fans, our sponsors, our staff, allowing them to exchange content, whether that's professional photos and videos or UGC or content created by the athletes themselves. We'll go through a lot of examples, I'm sure, when we go through the panel today, but a lot of fun looking at different ways to engage fans and get athletes, get teams, get partners to all work together to deliver great content and experiences for fans. And looking forward to joining this esteemed panel today. A lot of good people.
Awesome. Thank you guys again for joining us. So some questions are already flowing in, so we'll start here. Let me see, sorry. Okay. What kind of new trends have come up since the pandemic started that wasn't really emphasized beforehand?
Can I take a stab at that answer first? I see a lot of things online, especially from college athletics teams, about engaging fans. So things that relate to the brand and competition, but aren't exactly live tweeting games. So I see a lot of like coloring book pages and different like challenges that teams have done. I don't know if you guys have seen the like the Corona house, like who would you be quarantined with? Like that's a big trend that was going on last week. And so I just see a lot of efforts from teams and schools to still stay up front and stay engaged with their fan bases and their audiences, but doing more away from competition, more related to their brand. So we've had a really big push, especially from like our development office and our sponsorships office, to keep posting content. For the first couple of weeks, we were kind of quiet, trying to figure it out what the landscape was, and we were kind of going with things. And now we're still trying to let our fans know, like, we're going to come back. We don't know when, but we're going to come back better than ever. So we just kind of want to stay engaged and keep top of mind.
I'll piggyback off that. I think there's some really cool things happening now. A couple of things I'll speak on. One is you're seeing a lot of these teams, organizations, college programs, they're all equipped to be media companies. And that's what they are. They are typically covering their sport, their team, their games, but now they have these really talented creators, these really talented digital marketers that are looking to basically entertain their fans. And yes, integrate their brand still in an organic way, but all of a sudden now you're seeing teams look at, how can we create almost like a talk show or a comic strip or a Where's Waldo or a maze, or like, it's not just kids activities, but trivia nights. And so it's how can we entertain our fans in a way that's relevant to them, relevant to our brand. And then on the other side of that, you have the growth of what I call lifestyle content, sort of. The Patriots, I think the New England Patriots really got into this a couple of years ago. We're seeing a lot more now, whether it's cooking shows or how to parent or working out at home or what your favorite music is, what you're binging on Netflix, like all these things that are part of all of our lives, but we didn't necessarily think about it as we need to know about this from our athletes, from our favorite teams. And you're seeing a lot of organizations lean into that now because it's what everyone is relating to and can deal with. And to be able to see how your athletes, the people you look up to are dealing with it is really a cool and growing trend.
And I'll add that I think that a lot of it's not necessarily new, the personalization of the athletes, but they've stepped up their game. Now we're seeing an even deeper look inside their lifestyle because they're all doing the same stuff we are, trying to entertain ourselves as we get through COVID-19. And they're coming up with the most unique ways to showcase what's going on inside their homes. So I think it's maybe not necessarily what's new, but it's like how we're expanding on what we've already been doing for a long period of time.
I know for us, we tried to look at everything as completely outside the box of like everything we think that we've been doing. How do we reassess how we do that and make it an at-home experience? It's weird to take the motorsports is all about the sights and the sounds and the smells and everything else, like so many other sports. But when you take that away, what do we have and how do we recreate that feeling? So when we had the virtual race week last week, we were really trying to find elements that we thought could impact. So we did like a daily national anthem every day with different performers. We did an online concert on Friday night where fans could engage. We did a virtual program that was just like you would buy an official program at the track, but it had digital components. You could watch videos. It would drive traffic back to our website. And we also even did a virtual ticket to get people to share their experience, but it was a way for us to try to drive tune in because people would have to share their tickets. And it would a way to also get traffic to our website, which is not at the same rate it would typically be with us, with the race weekend. So trying to really think outside the box. And then when it comes to drivers and opportunities to work with teams, it feels like there's a lot more opportunity right now because if you can find a way to provide value back to those folks and give them some more access, whether it's media engagement or whatever. I mean, for example, last week we had 50 plus media appearances alone with 5 different drivers that we had booked directly through the OEMs with Toyota through our relationship. And that was fun because media was have been very hungry for something to talk about. So you put a driver who has a story to tell and is open to it, and they're going to provide that tune-in message, which was really beneficial for us last week. But it was fun to get to work with some of the guys to, everyone's just a bit more relaxed on doing some of the things that, because their schedule's not as full as what it would typically be.
I would say from all of us and Brent that talk about the schedule's not as full, and there's this interesting point in an athlete's life, right? So Opendorse, we work with athletes all day, every day. You know, I played football at Nebraska, and one day I could never play football again. And every athlete goes through that moment where there's no more games. Like there's not another game to get hyped up for. There's not a game to look forward to. And then they go through this transition of, then are people still going to care about me? What do I talk about? Right. And so these retired athletes have gone through this time and time again, where they are seeking out ways to keep their fans connected, even though they're not playing the game anymore. So they go through Throwback Thursday, they go, personal life, they talk about charities they care about. Like this retired athlete is the template of what every athlete is currently going through, right? And what it is practice to realize that when the games are gone, you're going to have to find another way to keep connected to your fans. And we had no way to explain to a current athlete how drastic their life changes the moment the games stop. Right now, every athlete on the planet is going through that. And even the people at the organizations realizing that this is training for what happens when your career's finished. And those that are learning that now are going to establish better habits now to keep connected in a better and more stronger way. So I think it's an interesting perspective of athletes realizing that when the games stop, there's still fans that follow you, but the type of content that you need to create to connect with them is a little bit different than when you have another game to look forward to.
Like, I'll add to that. I've worked with athletes at all stages of their career. And it's not just keeping your fans engaged, but those athletes also are looking for their own purpose. Just like, oh, hey, my fans still love me, but like I'm not seeking a championship. All these athletes are raised to and to focus on winning a championship and winning an award. And now they're sitting at home being dad or mom or a wife or a husband, or what's next, what's going to get me out of bed every day and challenge me. And so it's not just keeping the fans engaged, but like what's going to challenge them, because we all love having a purpose. We all love working with others for a common goal. And so it's not just keeping the fans engaged, it's the athlete retirement. And that's a big thing in sports that that needs more focus.
Yeah, I think that all of us on this panel, I mean, from the racetrack to representing a brand or the technology, Neil, and everyone's asking themselves, what is the role of a raceway if there's no race? What's the role of the athletic department if there's no athletics, right? What's the role of technology, to work with fans and connect fans if there's no games going on? And so everybody's seeking to understand that purpose. And I think it helps people identify that sports is, and the role that these brands and these venues play, relationships play, is much bigger than the games themselves. So I think it's actually going to shed light on the importance of brand and connections beyond the game.
I think it's been fascinating to see, from the start, there's kind of been two strategies, especially from the different, venues or different teams in sports, of how they handled it. You either talk all about what you're doing, or you are not talking about everything that you're doing. So if you're hosting, testing, or if you're doing it, you are telling everybody about it. Our strategy has been the opposite of that. Of we want to, while we're doing things behind the scenes, we're not talking about it and kind of pumping our chest as much. We want to be there when the renewal comes and to be able to talk about that, because that's when I think people are going to really need the positive, and we're trying to keep positive content. But then when you look at the content that's coming out, we're in week 5 now, or week 6. It has changed. The first few weeks, we were asking people for stuff. You would say, hey, take a picture of your neighborhood or what you're doing today and stuff. Well, by week 5, people are tired of us asking them questions. And you can kind of see that shift. And if you see, now the Some Good News has really popped over the last week. You've seen the 2 folks from the UK who are doing lip sync videos. I mean, you're starting to see positive content that people are giving back. And I think that's especially from our side, is we keep trying to look at what value are we giving to people, and let's quit asking people for stuff. Let's give them something that's going to entertain or enlighten or, increase their mood for the day. But it's fascinating to see exactly how this is going to continue in the weeks ahead, because the trends are changing. And, TikTok's, I know Gary Vee always, trumps a lot about TikTok. Go and just look at the trends on TikTok at any point in time if you're trying to reach a certain generation, and you'll see what everyone's doing.
One last thing I'll add, and it's funny because we always talk about how we're all competing with, like, who we're competing with basically, and in sports it was just like people are always going to watch the games. They're between gambling and March Madness and whatever, and now we really are competing against Netflix. It's why are you going to engage with your team's content, with your favorite athlete's content versus binging the latest Netflix show or watching Tiger King or whatever it may be? And it's like now we really have to earn those fans' attention, and teams are having to get more creative, athletes are having to put themselves out there more and think more like an entertainment brand than a sports brand, because there are no sports right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that relates to a question that Trey asked. He asked, are you reaching out to fans and getting feedback on what aspects of virtual engagement they like to see? And I think that's something that good brands on social, or just good brands in general, are listening to their fans. And so I think a lot of us who are creating content or coming up with ways to be entertaining or a distraction from like the real world and like the real news, we are listening to that. I think one of the good examples from Indiana is that we had a couple people reach out and say, hey, I know that sports aren't happening right now, but is there a way that you guys can show classic games? Can you show us the throwback games? So we went into our archives. We got permission from the Big Ten Network to broadcast some of our classics, and we called them Hoosier Classics. And so far we've been doing this. We're on week 3 right now. And so we've done a week of football, a week of men's basketball, and we're starting our 3rd week of women's basketball. And so that's just an example of like hearing what the fans want and filling that void and trying to kind of entertain, but also, keep our brand in people's minds, in people's homes. So
that might be a nice preview as well of what fan engagement could be like when we are all watching live games together, but we can't actually be at the stadium. And yeah, I definitely have seen a lot of, especially early on, teams just asking fans, what do you want? Help us figure it out. Like I saw the Charlotte Hornets on Twitter or Instagram, where they had like TRL, like it was like total request live, a TRL, like, what do you want from us today? And some people said, I want a compilation of Bismarck Biyombo's best blocks, or I want to see this game again, or let's play trivia. And so you're seeing the actual people asking fans what do they want. And then I think another point that I'll make that I've been hearing a lot just from my own internal conversations, that folks like, especially probably Blake and me, who are looking at across the board at a lot of teams, a lot of athletes all at the same time, will see like, oh, this team is also doing the what table do you want to be at, or this team is also doing this. And it's easy to get in that sort of silo, be like everyone's all copying each other. But you know what? If you're a fan of Indiana, if you're a fan of Nebraska, you're not looking at what all the other schools are doing and being like, oh, look at them, they're copying them, they're so unoriginal. If good content is good content, and when it's around your favorite team and your favorite athletes, like we shouldn't all be afraid, like, oh, someone already did that, I can't do that now. So that's something I think that we need to take into account quite a bit when we are trying to look at all these, spending time on Crowd Tangle all the time, for example.
Yeah, amen to that. All right. You got another one, Marissa?
Yeah.
Going deep.
This one relates to what Neil was just talking about, so if any of you other guys want to chime in. So what unique campaigns are you running during this time to relate fans and followers, and what type of content seems to be most engaging during these COVID-19 times? Photos, videos, GIFs, etc.
I'll say, one of the, more most engaging pieces of content is, NASCAR's been doing the live games, the historical races and things like that. But we started to find some content that was, finding some specific laps or something from an old race and stuff would add a lot. But last week, the national anthems, which was, we even said it, that's what country radio stations are doing right now. And, but that plays a lot to the base of NASCAR, and doing that with folks who have a story, and people can get that feeling of, oh yeah, that's the guy who sings at the spring race, or that girl has sang for 8 years. We really saw a lot of engagement around that. Same goes for the Friday night concert, which honestly, from a lift standpoint, were not overly difficult. More the live streaming was probably more so with the band. but the others are basically sharing videos, and was pretty consistent. And you could see the engagement around those things, which I thought was, you don't always know. You can put a lot of time and effort into something, and if the distribution strategy doesn't work, it doesn't pop. And especially with not spending as much on paid media right now, if at all, everything having to be organic, it has kind of leveled the playing field with some organizations, because you're not having the opportunity for someone to outpay to get their content in front of you on some other things.
The other thing that I think is important is the transition of the content and the timing, the crisis communications behind it. Like, I think we were all looking at what do we do originally, is what's appropriate at this time. Or, as we all kind of shut down and we're watching the news, can we really be out there having fun? And we had to monitor when the right time was to kind of capitalize on it, is the right word, but like put it out and execute any kind of content that we are doing. We had to, go through that hurdle and monitor the crisis that was, we had to be appropriate to what was happening around us. And so we've transitioned from, we can't say anything, what can we say? All right, now we're entertaining, and being mindful of that and having the right tone in the content.
There's the old line in fantasy sports that the best trades you ever make are the ones that people don't accept. And I think it's the same way in your content, that, sometimes you have to tell yourself to slow down and to not post or to not share something, because while it feels good to you, it may not be the best thing at that point in time. And I think the hardest thing, it's the same way you go to get a haircut. I always say the hardest thing for anyone who's cutting hair to do is to not cut as much hair. Just take a little off, and it's all gone. It's what you're paid to do. And I think on the social side, it's that exact same thing of, trying to do less and to focus on your impact and make sure what you're doing is that, and not feeling the funnel of, hey, I accomplished this today. I did like 8 posts and this and that, and just saying, take it back, relax, speak when it's necessary. We don't have to lead the conversation. We just have to be in the conversation.
I think that's a great answer to Carly's question. Shout out to Carly, she's my intern. But she asked, how do you balance between having enough content and having too much content? And I think, there's that sweet spot, and hopefully every social person or every branding related person knows what that is. I think we've seen some examples where they didn't know and it kind of backfires. But I loved your haircut analogy. It's just, when you know, and hopefully people are listening to their fans and listening to their constituents, student athletes. We've been asking our student athletes to do a lot for us. They do a lot of heavy lifting with selfie videos and showing us what it's like at home, but sometimes they get tired too. So just knowing, everything that you're working with, being able to balance, when the right time is for a certain message. And I think especially because of this COVID-19 thing, every state is different. So what works for, Nebraska might not work for Indiana. All of our governors are kind of making their own different decisions. And so that also kind of helps dictate. We jumped in on this campaign that our state government is running with a lot of the big colleges and big brands in the state called In This Together. And so we are relating a lot of our feel good, stay home, what are you doing? What are our coaches doing now that they can't coach? That campaign all relates to In This Together. So certain things fit with that and certain things don't. And it's our job to kind of figure out what works and what doesn't.
There's definitely always an unease about, we have to post every day. We got to make sure that we stay top of mind. The biggest fear is that fans are going to forget about us or not care as much as they did before the pandemic. And that's something that's always, I think, in the back of a lot of people's minds. But I think something that I'm seeing that is just so heartwarming and I love seeing it is that it feels like we're getting back to what social media is really all about. And that's that conversation and connecting with each other. We're all anxious and desperate to feel connection with each other. And so when we do have an opportunity to comment on a post and give our take on debate, or find fans that are in similar situations with us and how are they dealing with their kids, or how is this athlete dealing with their parents or their situation or whatever it may be, and you're seeing so much more back and forth conversation, back and forth content even. I mean, to have Ernie Johnson doing his weekly journalist Q&As, or to have teams or announcers getting content from fans and then spitting it back out with their play-by-play of their kids shooting a hoop or whatever. It's this whole true connection and relationship building that your teams and athletes are really connecting with their fans, and fans connecting with each other just more than ever before, because there's so much of a fire hose and content, more content, another game, or another transaction, another piece of news, and now we're getting content back just as much as we're seeing content go out, and it really is that true relationship and true connection that it's hard to put into words almost, but as someone who's been in this social media game for a long time, it's cool to see that it's back to conversation and back to connection.
With this experience, I do think that you're seeing leaders, but over the long haul, you're going to see who stays as a leader. And it's really an opportunity for some of these athletes to create a new and unique identity for themselves. I've worked with athletes for, as I said before, 19 years. And I remember in 2001, one of my athletes stepped up and wrote a letter to New York, went on to win a World Series. And then for years, he stayed the course with philanthropy. So it wasn't, you'll see a lot of athletes speaking out and talking out, but then you'll also see the athletes that take it to the next step when we're back to normal in society. So some of these athletes will create completely new career opportunities for themselves because of what they're doing right now on social media. They'll like it, their fans will like it, brands will like it, and they'll take it to the next level outside of the sport. Which is, it's a unique opportunity for those athletes who don't focus on what they're doing outside of sports to have that opportunity to create that image for themselves. I know we spoke about that earlier, but it really is a unique time for them.
It is. An observation around sponsored content in sports. I know that there's going back to like understanding your purpose, and a lot of advertisers or sponsors are trying to find different ways other than pure promotional messaging that may flood your feed, during a regular season and whatnot. But so the advertiser sponsors being more cognizant of what type of message they're pushing and when they're pushing it out and that sort of thing. And I mentioned at the start about the NFL draft is tomorrow. And there are those brands that are part of the NFL story, the family, right? Again, the EA Sports and Tides and whatnot. And they do activations around the draft. One of the interesting things, I think there's hope for teams and leagues and athletes when the events, start again, and having high value opportunities for sponsors to connect in a big way. And what I mean by that is we have athletes and their agents tomorrow for the draft are asking for and commanding rates for social media activations that are 4 to 5 times higher than the average, and sponsors are willing to pay for it. And the reason is that tomorrow with the NFL draft, it's kind of the first real sports thing, that's happening since COVID-19, that the draft happens every year. And there's this big bet that all eyeballs are going to be on what Joey Burrow says the moment he gets drafted. Same thing with Chase Young and Tua and Jalen Hurts. And so I think that when sports do return, there's going to be this overabundance of engagement and excitement that sponsors, if they have been slow to activate during these times because they don't know where they fit, are prepared to jump back in and be a part of those moments when sports return.
Yeah, I'll echo what Blake was going to a little bit too, and it's that whole, like, without events, without games, there is and even just in general, there's a lot more value now placed on social media. I even saw, I think it was an Adweek article the other day with Eric Toda talking about how social as a whole is just rising up within an organization because everyone realizes this is our most powerful lever right now. This is maybe the only way we can have to reach consumers at a large level. And it's interesting to see that sponsors are realizing that as well. This might be the hump that we need to get over for social to be less an accessory or a throw-in, and really the crux of a campaign, and not just the throw-on or the bonus on top. And so it's interesting to see that happen right before our eyes, and it's cool because it's getting a lot more creative and a lot more original. And I know we're seeing it on our side as well with our clients.
Yeah, those are some awesome points. So we have another question. When we finally get the approval to go back to sporting events, people will be unsettled or tentative to contribute or attend. What things do you plan on doing to show them that it is safe to attend and to help them maintain their comfortability?
I think if you look back at the history of the last century, even professional sports has always been a part of the renewal of the return, from the recession to 9/11 to what's to come around COVID-19. Sports has always been a part of that narrative. So I think, the difference, at least in this instance, is the coming back and gathering in large masses to be a part of things. And I think that will be the unique component that is so different than anything that we've ever dealt with before, in knowing how that's going to react. I think the organizations and entities that do things that are going to allow folks to understand they can come back in a safe manner, and doing some smaller things first. There's been reports NASCAR may host some races without fans. All sports have basically had reports around that. But all the tracks there's some local tracks here doing like track laps where you could go and take your cars on. Well, there's no worry about social distancing if you're allowing people to come drive their cars on the track. We have track laps throughout the year, and that's an event we hope to have once we can come back to do, because that'll be like an entree of getting people back, starting to get people feel more comfortable. But we also, on our side, have to make sure that we are prepared to make sure that we are providing all those safety measures and stuff. And those are all the things that are being worked on in deep details right now for when we do come back.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, to back off of what Brent said, we're at a different kind of place with that because we're on a college campus. They kind of set the tone for what we do. Our whole campus is basically shut down. We're telling people not to come. We're telling people not to come to work even. So we can't really host people at our facilities, but we are making policy changes and trying to be cognizant of what the future might look like. I will preface that by saying no one knows. We don't know what the future is going to look like. We don't know when we're going to come back. We don't know if there will be fans or no fans or what at this point. So, but we are making changes regarding ticket sales and different things to kind of let fans know when the time comes that they can come back. We are thinking of them. We've kind of enacted a policy for like putting money down for tickets. And we're not the only school, especially in our conference. I think Michigan was the first school to kind of make those changes regarding tickets. So we're not to the point really of saying what we're going to do in venue when the time comes, but we are trying to let fans know that we are thinking of them and their financial situation ahead of time.
It is unique to think about the time that we're in, because for years we've been hearing about cord cutting and television not being what it was. Well, we have now re-entered the golden age of television because the ratings are there. People are watching more. It's not just streaming. It's not just the numbers. You're seeing things on a different scale. If you just look at the 4 iRaces that have been held by NASCAR, we've set the esports broadcast record 4 weeks for all 4 of the races. Every week has been a different record. I think last week we were 3rd, I think, or 4th. But it's fascinating to see. Now, is that going to continue to go up? It's already kind of hit a peak and started to go down in some ways. But I think we have re-entered a golden age of television, and there's going to be more dollars there. And most people's sports broadcast entities are all the games are tied to broadcast contracts, and that is the sustaining revenue that is being tied to most from every major sport, because you can't account for what the fan ticket selling is going to do. Now, you're still going to have your partner dollars, you're still going to have your suites and things like that may be controllable, but it really is fascinating to see what those television numbers look like once the sports all do start to come back. Because I can't say it's going to be a virtual Super Bowl, but everyone's going to be looking for a slice of that pie, and you're going to see it high at the beginning and then bifurcate after that once everyone starts taking back their core.
And there are a couple things, one on to jump off what Brent was saying. We're definitely going to see more exploration of how can we maximize other revenue streams besides the gate, especially if the gate's not there, if ticket sales aren't there. Are there other ways we can monetize fans? And then on just the whole, will fans attend? We're seeing polls every day now, like X% say they're going to come back if there's a vaccine or if there's this. At the very least, we're going to see teams do what they do best, which is put out content that delivers a message. And in this case, the message is going to be, here's what we're doing to make sure that you're safe. Right now we're seeing PSAs. We're seeing, entertainment content. We're going to see content around hear from our head of venue security or venue health, whatever it may be, about what we're doing to make sure that you're safe. You're going to see a lot of those communication stories, PR stories, and just a whole industry perhaps and sponsors might be involved as well to make sure that they're helping assure that you're safe if you come out to the game, come out to the race, wherever it may be. And I'll also say I'm looking forward to the day, and maybe it won't ever happen. There's going to be like a Bud Light sweepstakes to be like, you get to be one of 100 fans that goes into the 60,000 seat stadium to cheer on your team. And that's just a little pie in the sky dream for me.
What Brent said before is kind of what I was going to take it, was the idea of the advertising costs and the value. With the fans not in the stands, those advertising costs will be the moneymaker. It's definitely interesting to see how a return to broadcast TV. As someone who was in broadcast TV, and I know Brent, you spent some time in what was in the day.
Yeah.
I love that there's so much focus on television right now, even watching the nightly news. Like, most of us probably don't watch the news anymore, but you're watching it to get your content. And I love it's kind of what TV needed a little bit to resurrect itself. So it's interesting to see. And what will be really interesting to see is it going to be as exciting without the fans sitting in the stands if they actually activate and go back to playing games without fans involved?
Well, we'll have another panel to talk about games and events without fans in the stands. Look at Marissa.
Yeah, so while we're on that topic, actually, another question that relates: if fans are not allowed to attend games and events in the fall when they resume, how heavily do you expect the field to rely on social media and associated platforms to bring the game day experience at home? Do you think tomorrow's draft will be a glimpse of that possibility?
I think it's going to be huge. This is something before everything happened, and I think the NBA was the first league to kind of cancel something sports related. I was actually working the game against Nebraska where Fred Hoiberg was on the bench not feeling well. So we were one of the last games played in college basketball before they canceled March Madness, and that was something that we were thinking about. That was something that we were planning for. Like, what does our social need to look like if, the only people in venue can be players' families, And so I think definitely this puts an even more of an emphasis on social and what we're doing content-wise, how we're kind of not just live tweeting the event, but also like showing behind the scenes, how we're showing what you don't see through the broadcast. And I think everyone who's tuned in right now should definitely watch and see on social what happens with the draft. I know the NFL has reached out to the different colleges to try to kind of get us on the same page, and they kind of do it every year, but I feel like this year was definitely emphasized on, if you guys are putting stuff out, we want it to be, we want to blow it up and escalate it, because that's where a lot of people are following it. So definitely pay attention to the different colleges and the different NFL teams themselves during the draft, because I think this will be a banner year for social content.
I'll chime in on that as well. I think someone had a follow-up question to something Kyler had asked, what about media attending events? And, that is, if you don't have fans at the event, will a media be allowed in? And most likely the case would be no, because you would limit that. You would have your broadcast partners, and that would be it, because you wouldn't deal with the travel. If you saw the reports even this morning that 9 airline workers had passed away since February, that had captured it through. So there's a lot of other elements there. And also for coming back, even with no fans, the testing will have to be stringent for any players and for any athletes that are involved and the teams involved. But you're also going to have to be careful, because all it takes is one positive test. That I think we all forget the NBA was the first to literally have what will years from now we'll see a 30 for 30 about how it all went down, and it'll start with the NBA and having an athlete test positive during a game or at the start, right before the start of a game. And I think we'll look back at that, because I think everyone has to tiptoe into that, because if you do have one athlete get it, you've exposed a whole team, and now you've shut down a whole sport. And not knowing how we all have this in our own organizations. You don't know how safe some people are being compared to others. We have 3 children, and one of ours has a low immune system, and my wife has a low immune system. So we are very quarantined. I am the one who goes for everything with PPE and everything else going. But it is very careful. And I think it'll be unique to see how the sports all tackle the testing issue so you can come back. And that once you solve that, then I think you can start discussing how the fans can come back.
I'm part of the generation too. I think to go back to the question a little bit, we've kind of seen these ebbs and flows. We went through to a point where it was, how do we make the at-home experience really good and make TV watching even better, HD and all these different elements. And then it was, damn it, we made the TV experience too good. We need to make sure that we need to focus on the in-stadium experience now. How do we make the innovative experience something that can't be equal at home? And now we're kind of going back a little bit of how do we bring more of the in-venue experience and the specialness about that into the home a little bit. So I think it's interesting to consider, what are those key elements that make it special to be at a game, and how do we bring some of those elements into the couch? Is it VR or AR? Maybe there's a moment for those technologies to really take off. Is there different kind of audio that we can have? You're looking at, you're reading about some of these platforms that allow you to pipe in audio into venues, or, the virtual booing, of course, that Bud Light's doing with the NFL draft tomorrow. And so it'll be interesting to see how can we make fans feel connected? How can we make them feel like they're at the game? Maybe we'll see some MLB pitchers who are off that day, be able to post or live tweet from the bullpen or from the bench, or there's going to be new opportunities to explore and to see what can we do with what we have, and also how can we help fans feel like they are here so that they do want to watch every minute of that game, see all the sponsors, and not just check the score later or see how their bets did or whatever.
Someone mentioned just the families that are going to be in the stands. If the families are going to be the only ones allowed in the stands, aside with maybe not even security needed, but journalists, those families have the inside scoop, and they're going to have some great social media content, because some of them don't have anyone stopping them from telling you what's really going on with the athlete, the team, or the relationships behind the game. So it could be very interesting to see what gets said.
And Katie,
study families, it's awesome what they have to say, and they don't tell you.
Yeah, I think, guys, there's something to be said for the last time you went to a sporting event and you look down your row and you look in the stands, you're on the concourse, it's safe to say that those people are some of the most passionate about the game that's about to be played, because they bought the ticket, they got out of bed, they went to the venue, they tailgated, they got the t-shirt to prove it, right? And those passionate fans, you look down the row, and most of them are eyes glued to the field or this Jumbotron. They're not, some will be on their phone, right? That live tweeting and live posting from sports games, it happens. But if you remove that and you put them in their couch and you look down the couch, everyone will have their phone out. And the most passionate fans that maybe are reserved for booing and yelling in the venue are going to be doing the same thing through social. So I see conversation going to spike, because if you're not allowed to be there, the most passionate fans are now armed with social channels to at least try and recreate that experience of watching the game with people. So I just, there's always been that steady flow of fan engagement from home, watching on television. But it's safe to say that there's going to be an influx of highly passionate individuals that are at home on their couch trying to connect in a similar way, and activity should increase for that.
Are you guys, Indiana, Linnea, thinking about if we do get to the point when you guys were talking about what we do with fans not at games, and some of your biggest fans, some of your most important fans from a donation perspective might be, 50, 60-year-old plus, and may not be the type to understand what it means to live tweet a game or whatever it may be. Are you guys thinking about how can we help educate these fans almost to experience all the cool stuff that the younger generations experience, because they won't be able to go to games?
Yes, that's a really good point. So I know we've already talked about a lot of the stuff that we're doing on social, like content-wise, and I think that's great for a certain demographic, certain generation. But like you said, are we hitting, a lot of our demographic? In Indiana, our demographic does skew a bit older, and so we are thinking of them. We actually, our varsity club is really big on that, pushing, the demographic of our donors, and actually, we have meetings almost daily, but we compile a newsletter that we send specifically to people of a certain age, because we know that they're the ones who are opening the emails and reading them, and we know that we can hit the younger generation, the people who are students, people who are millennials, on those channels specifically. So we're trying to package the things that we're doing and the news that we have and delivering it all over the place. So we are thinking of them, and I think that will only kind of evolve and change, when we figure out where we're going with this. So
when you think about the hospitality model and stuff as well, I mean, we all have those hospitality spaces that partners have sponsored, and you've got, folks who are coming in, they've spent a large amount of money to be there. And part of that typically is access to the athletes, that you have a driver, an athlete come in and do a Q&A, or a retired athlete and things like that. And the race teams have all started to figure this out because they've started doing hospitality sessions before an iRace. So they have connected with with those who are doing it and talking directly to them. And I know it was some of the things we talked about last week, especially with our close Toyota relationship, on trying to reconnect to a lot of the Toyota auto dealers, so they would still have those touch points from that perspective. And I think while iRacing right now is a small window to the world, it really is a glimpse to what could be coming when you can't get your athlete to go to the space where they can be close to everybody, because they may not be able to be exposed to that at that point in time right before a race. You can't sign things on the same thing. So when we did like some virtual autograph sessions last week, where folks would tweet pictures of themselves, and they would sign it back and then text or tweet it back to them and things. Just trying to change that model and be able to think of what it's like, because you may not, some folks even did Photoshop, where they were Photoshopping themselves into photos. The St. Louis Blues did a thing, I think a couple weeks ago, where they did they had a wallpaper Wednesday, which most everyone does, but they said, send us your name and number and we'll put your jersey on it. And they came up with it. I'm a diehard Blues fan, and I did it, and I don't know if you could see it, but they sent back a retro wallpaper jersey that had mine. Now I think they underestimated the demand, because it took 2 weeks for them to send it back. But once they came back, I was pumped, like, yeah, go Blues, and stuck it on my phone. And I think those elements of giving away and doing, the graphical components, the social components, the giveaway components, are really going to be key for how you're transitioning to what that world looks like. And we are kind of all getting used to this Zoom thing of seeing people and feeling like we're out in the real world for a few minutes, even though, who knows where I'm at right now with this virtual background. So
that's a great way for the Blues for you to continue to be a fan without going to a game and without having the opportunity to do that. And I think you made a great point on the experience and hospitality side. And we, again, looking at the bigger picture of it's been so much about experiences. Millennials value experiences. We got to give them more experiential opportunities at our events. And now we don't have events, and we have core partners who had been putting a lot of money and time into building these experiences. And now what do we do? And you're seeing a lot of different people changing on a dime, pivoting to how can we create a unique experience without a live event. And I mean, an example you see right now with NFL draft, every year it's an annual thing almost. A lot of teams will do a sweepstakes where you get to announce our draft pick, or a season ticket holder does, or you get to meet our draft pick in person. And now you're seeing that evolve into, you get a personal Zoom chat with our draft pick, or you get to be on a conference call with our GM or after the draft, whatever it may be. And it's how do we create these unique experiences still, which people value. They want to talk about it. They want to share about it. They want to have that memory. They want to have that IG post they can brag about. And how can we make those special experiences happen, even if you can't be at an event? So I think it's really cool to see that corporate hospitality, those sponsored experiences kind of play out. And Brent, you're on the front lines there at Richmond with NASCAR being a very experience-driven event.
Okay, so we have time for one more question. We're a little less than 10 minutes from the end. So we're seeing a heavy focus on platforms such as Zoom, Twitch, Instastory, and nostalgia from #TheLastDance and old games being played, both of which were not always front and center in social media strategies. From each of your perspectives and roles, how do you think these platforms or these nostalgic approach can be integrated now?
I want to jump in on this. One of the things is again, from the athlete's perspective, going back to the retired athlete experience, just to give you a visual example, is that the moment these guys walk away from the game, guys and gals, every single clip, every single photo, video that they were in while they're on the team or competing in their sport is sitting on a shelf somewhere. They don't have access to it. They've got no, it's a challenge for them to go back and just find photos for a good throwback Thursday or videos. And that archive content is being used in so many different ways now. We are realizing that the teams like Linnea, you can't keep pumping every throwback into your channel. They're just, you got other things to do, and it's just overload when it's in yours. But then you start to think, well, if I could find the top play for every student athlete last year and just push it to them, you know, that's their increased channel. So it's basically bringing the content that's sitting on a shelf to the forefront that's being emphasized now. And I don't think it should stop. I think that eventually you realize that people are connected to the moments, right? The moments that matter in sports. And if you can relive those moments like we're all doing right now, there's a lot of power. There's a lot of power in that connection. So I look to see that more archive content or the Last Dance type initiatives being, you know, brought to the forefront of strategies and saying that, hey, while all fresh media and the content from the last game is important, the thing from 10 years ago today and 20 years ago today has value, and maybe not just in the team's channels, but also in the channels of the athletes as well.
During my career, I worked for a sports auction house, a live memorabilia house, and we sold vintage sports memorabilia. And I'll tell you, my role was publicity for it. They were a client of mine, and whenever I called anywhere with a Babe Ruth bat or a Ted Williams jersey or what have you, it was like instant. You'd bypass every other thing going on in the world. They'd put you on TV to talk about it. Brent knows what I'm talking about, because I think I booked some people on your shows once upon a time. But and then it was just, people love that nostalgia and the history. And then many years I spent at Comcast Sportsnet in Philadelphia, and we used to have a channel called Sportsnet Classics. And it was a popular thing because everyone wanted to get around the TV. So when this took off, right when sports was canceled, and everyone thought it was new, it really wasn't new. It's just reinventing that wheel.
Yeah, I think I'll echo what both of you guys are saying there too. Like with what Blake was mentioning about, you know, these treasure troves of archived content. We're definitely seeing that with a lot across the board with our customers of opening up these content banks and funneling it to their athletes, whether it's old photos of their team or of them, highlights as well is a big thing, or piggybacking on what's being played on, you know, as far as re-airs or rebroadcast on linear TV or on Facebook as well. And I think something with nostalgia, it's comfort food. It's something that makes the reason why we love nostalgia. It reminds us of those childhood years, those times when we were younger, those times when everything was easier. And you know, that's why nostalgia always plays. And right now we need comfort food more than ever. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of nostalgia. But on the other side of the coin too, it might make sense for the, you know, people in my generation, you know, who can remember stuff from the 90s. But you're also seeing a lot of focus now on youth efforts as well. And you know, a lot of times in the middle of the season, we're so focused on selling tickets to the next game or activating this sponsor. And oftentimes, you know, we have a kids club and we're taking care of that. We have our kids day every now and then. But you're seeing everyone go really heavy into. We know those parents with kids at home who don't know what to do with these kids all day. So their teams are helping to fill that void, and in doing so, they're helping create those fans up tomorrow. You know, if you're going to do a coloring book of Gritty today, you know, if you can get that fan to become a Gritty fan, then a Flyers fan, by the time they're 9, 10 years old, you might have a fan for life. And so you're seeing not just the nostalgia to capture maybe the older fans and make sure they stay emotionally tied, emotionally connected to the team. But also now it's, hey, you know, we don't have these day-to-day goals that we have to adhere to so much. You know, let's dive into and build these emotional ties now with these kids and go all in on these youth programs.
I'll say this. Oh, go ahead.
In that I see myself educating my kids on some of these people that I'm like, I can't believe you don't know who they are. There are people that they're just icons in my world from my youth or what have you. And they're names that today's generation just doesn't recognize because they're not paying attention to it. So it is a great opportunity to reconnect us with my love of a specific team and their love and what it was like when I was a kid and what they have today and who they have today.
think one of the things we'll see in the weeks ahead too, as we start to, hopefully, get back to things, is, in most every market, sports tourism is really, fettered and helped by sports and all the tourism in all those areas. And I know we've worked really closely with Richmond Region Tourism, the Virginia Tourism Corporation, Henrico, Visit Henrico, the county that we're located in, and others. And it's interesting to see all around the country, all those tourism bureaus and what they're doing. I mean, like they're doing virtual jigsaw puzzles, they're doing of iconic events, virtual tours. So you can, you may not be able to go to some of those areas now, but we will give you a virtual tour, things like that are happening. But, to bring those back, because at the end of the day, for a lot of us who work closely in the sports tourism industry as well, it's heads and beds, and people aren't traveling. And I know in our market, we're Richmond races in the state of, in the region, we are the 4 of the top 5 days annually of heads and beds, close to capacity, and set new records, it feels like, almost every year. And how we get back to that, to getting people to travel or to come, is going to be a slow churn. But I think having that messaging out there and be able to work closely to them, along with partnering with historic figures and current athletes, to give that message of hope and come and see me and be a part of this, and welcoming folks, is really going to be key to everyone, taking that step once we know that it's safe, to feeling comfortable enough to take your family to go do those things.
We'll probably have a whole other chat and panel about virtual recruiting, I'm sure, as well, with Linnea there in Indiana and across schools across the country, being able to showcase, here's what our facility looks like, here's what our weight room looks like, because you can't take your visit right now.
We're doing that right now.
Heck yeah.
I had a call about it right before I jumped on here, so it's very real.